Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome all to DnDTime Talks, where we discuss all things Dungeons and Dragons. I am Pete.
I'm Jeremy.
So Jeremy, what's going on, man? I heard a crack. I heard a crack of a can.
A crack? Oh, that's a water bottle.
Crack of a water bottle.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you, Pete?
I'm doing pretty good. I got a Nantucket Nectar's squeezed lemonade bottle that's been emptied and filled with water. It's kind of like a water bottle.
It's probably a little better than a water bottle.
Yeah, it might be. Well, the tap water in my town's pretty good. So yeah, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Today's topic is the Blood War, specifically the first chapter of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, the brand new book that just got released from Wizards of the Coast. Me and Jeremy are both really excited to talk about this, just because we just really want to talk about it. It's going to be a fun conversation, we think. If you don't want spoilers from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, then we're going to be talking about that all night, so please block your ears.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty stoked to talk about it myself. For those of you unawares, welcome to DnDTime Talks. This is a simple talk show where Pete and I talk about all things Dungeons and Dragons. Usually we cover differing topics varying from maybe DM tips and tricks to little character or class breakdowns to role-playing tips. But tonight, yeah, like we were saying, we're talking about the Tome of Foes, and I'm super stoked. Tome of Foes has a bunch of different chapters within it. Right now we're going to focus just on the Blood War, which, for those of you unawares, is going to be about the Nine Hells, the Abyss, Devils, Demons, and Law and Chaos. So pretty cool Dungeons and Dragons stuff. But before we dive into that, I just want to say hi to everyone in the chat. How you doing, everyone? Special call out. I see him, Bionic Sheba, in there.
You're a hero,
shit, brother.
You're a hero.
For those unawares, Bionic Sheba has put together a super cool bot for our Discord server that can look up character information, your points here on Twitch, that are spectator tracks. And yeah, it's really cool. It's amazing how quickly he was able to put that stuff together. So thank you very much, Sheba. We super appreciate it.
I also see Reflected 10-8 and Mr. Plunderloot out there. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out. What's going on?
Hey, we love you guys just as much.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's not finished, but it could already do ridiculously incredible things.
Yes.
Your not finished is better than our complete.
Thank you. Thank you. From the bottom of our hearts.
Amen. So without further ado, well, I guess before we jump into the whole thing.
Announcements?
Yeah. Pete, I think we've got a really cool announcement today.
With regards to Friday, you mean?
With regards to Friday, I mean.
On Friday, we're not doing our regular D&D time, Pete and Jeremy's D&D time game. Instead, we're doing a player DM day, where our mid-tier players are going to be running games for myself and Jeremy. We will be playing our NPCs, Bartholomew and Roger. It should be a lot of fun. We have no idea what we're going to be in store for, but we think it's going to be an absolute blast. So tune in for that. It's going to be kind of four adventures instead of the usual three, as each of our mid-tier players is going to run one kind of Pete and Jeremy style adventure. So yeah, I come tune in on Friday, 9 o'clock. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it should be pretty sweet. I'm really excited about it. And second, I don't think there's a second. That's it. Oh yeah, actually, second, Saturday afternoon, I'm going to be running my behind the screen D&D Time Delve prep session, which is going to be an hour to an hour and a half long. I'm going to convert a 4th edition adventure from the Dungeon Delve book for 5th edition, set it up on Roll20, and get ready to run it on Saturday. It should be really exciting. So yeah, that's about it for that. Before we dive all the way into the Blood War, if you have any topics you want us to talk about, let us know on our Discord server. Links can be found below, or just type it in the chat and hope that we notice it. We try and pay a lot more attention to the chat during talks and brews than we are able to do during the. So,
yep,
yeah.
Cool.
Without without delaying any longer, Pete, should we dive right in? Pete, what is Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes in general? Like, what is the book? What's it about?
Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. It is based on an old wizard by the name of Mordenkainen, specifically. For those of you who aren't aware of this particular piece of lore, he's kind of this wizard that travels the multiverse, going about his own goals and working towards his own ends, but he's actually Gary Gygax's player character that they've kept in the lore and had doing all these things over different editions, which I think is really cool. And this is Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. It's a pretty big book. It covers a wide array of topics. Some of the things in the book, the thing we're going to be focusing on tonight is the Blood War and demons and devils, but there's also tons of stuff about like elves and dwarves and halflings and gnomes and a whole bunch of new monsters from all kinds of different planes. So definitely check it out if you get the chance. Tonight we're going to be discussing not a ton of the content. We'll be talking a little bit about demons and devils just to make sure that people have the right sort of context for what we're talking about. But most we're going to be talking about our own opinions on the book, what we think has like a lot of value for players to put into their own games, some of our like previous experiences with the Outer Planes, in particularly in the Nine Hells, where we recently just finished a campaign that was very largely focused on the Nine Hells and devils. So we'll be talking about how this book kind of affected our perspective of like the Nine Hells, and it's kind of what we're going to be going over tonight.
Yeah, it should be a ton of fun. It should be super exciting. And yeah, like I was saying, this isn't going to be the kind of stream that is a replacement for the book. We're not just going to read up and then spit everything else in the book back at you. We're going to more of kind of give you our opinions on what it's about. How is the writing? How useful is the information? So, anywho, why are we talking about this? Well, it just came out. It's brand new. I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah, I just really wanted to talk about it.
Yeah,
that was kind of it.
It's just sweet. That's all. I mean, there's no more to that. And I guess whether or not you own the book, actually, especially if you don't own the book, I think this stream is going to be super helpful for you, because this might give you an idea if this is the kind of book you're interested in. This is going to be our part one in a couple of series about this book. This one is about the Blood War, which is chapter 1 in the book. Mm-hmm. About, like I said, demons, devils, chaos law, the abyss, and the Nine Hells, all that. The second chapter in the book is about elves, and there are a few more chapters in the book about different races. We're probably going to cover all the other races in one Talks episode, because they go into a lot of nitty-gritty detail about lore and the Forgotten Realms that may not be applicable to everyone. So we'll talk about those in one broad stroke probably next time. And then in our third episode in the series, we're going to talk about monsters. Namely, Pete and I are going to pick out some of our favorite monsters from the book, and it'll be really exciting.
Yeah, and talk about how you guys can use those in your games and stuff like that. There's some really cool ones.
So yeah, if you haven't seen, if you don't know anything about Tome of Foes, if you're not sure if you want it, the next 3 Talks episodes should really help you out. Give you that big old know-how, give you the big old thinks. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let's just move on. Let's talk about the basics. Just start it out.
So when I wrote the show notes, I was thinking, Jeremy, although we've talked about it a little bit more than I thought we would have even beforehand, because we couldn't contain ourselves, I thought a good place to start was just to say, like, what was your first impression of the first chapter? Like, what was your overall opinion of it? And I think I already know what it is because we talked about it. We both really like this chunk on the Blood War. I'll
say, and I'm going to compare this directly to Volo's Guide to Monsters. It'd help if we did a review of Volo's Guide, but we didn't. So we're going to just, if you've read Volo's Guide, this might help you. At the beginning of Volo's Guide, they have a lot of their pre-bestiary section where they talk about different, specifically types of monsters and some lore behind them. And I found that information like not really useful personally, because if I'm going to use mind flayers in my game, in my homebrew game, then I'm probably going to do my own kind of take on to some degree. There's elder brains, there's mind flayers, cool, but I didn't think I needed a lot of that information in Volo's, whereas in this book, I felt like it was super helpful. I think a lot of this, no matter, like, because even if you're homebrewing your own world, you don't want to also have to homebrew Outer Plane. It's easier to just take those and stick them in your setting. And because, you know, the Nine Hells and the Abyss are law and chaos, they're not specific to a setting, right? Law and chaos are just principles in the world, in the multiverse, or in the universe.
Yeah.
So they're more generally usable. I guess your question, how do I feel about it? I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a much more refined step, I think, from what they did in Villas.
I agree. Yeah, that's it. I liked it. In particularly the Devils, like we said, we just finished up a campaign that was set in the Nine Hells recently, that I was running. I really love the lore, in particularly of the Devils. They've always kind of been something in the DM's guide that I was like really attracted to initially when I first started DMing, and I so wish that I had this book when I started DMing that game, that I had all this really cool devil lore to like incorporate into my world, but nothing to be done about that. But overall, I thought this first chunk of the book was awesome.
Yeah, so let's start by just giving a very brief explanation of what the Blood War is. Because, you know, we've said the Blood War like a whole bunch of times, the top right-hand corner of the screen, top right-hand corner. Yeah, right, it's not flip screen, guys. Top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the Blood War. What is it? In essence, in the Forgotten Realms, the Blood War represents the eternal battle between the Nine Hells, which are the devils, and the Abyss, which is where the demons are all from. The demons are creatures of pure and utter chaos, bent on pure entropy and annihilation of the world, whereas the devils are creatures more of law. They are more interested in corrupting souls to evil and their whole bureaucratic hierarchy of things throughout the Nine Hells. And I really dig this. I think this is a really cool kind of premise, right? Because the idea is the demons can't get to the upper planes without traveling through the river Styx, which brings them right through hell. There's a kind of principle that you just kind of have to accept as part of this, that even though player characters can plane shift, devils and demons can't plane shift from their places to the material plane.
Yeah,
that's just
certainly not nearly as easily.
Yeah, they can't just freely do it.
Yeah.
And so once you've accepted that and accepted that the demons need to go through the Nine Hells to get to the material plane, and the Nine Hells are filled with devils that stop the demons, it gives the devils this deeper, like, purpose. On top of the fact that this book goes into a lot of details from the devil's perspective and doesn't paint them as just this pure, unbridled evil thing that a lot of people think of them as, I think it just really gives her a greater purpose in the grand scheme of things. You can't just go and kill all the devils, because that doesn't solve your problem. And I dig that. That just makes a new worse problem. Yeah.
So a couple of the other things that we're going to be talking about a lot, that you should know just kind of generally about the devils and the demons. If you're not familiar, the devils have a very strict hierarchical,
yeah, right.
Hierarchical, okay. Society where, you know, each different type of devil is almost like a class and a caste system, and it slowly moves up. The highest of these devils are called the archdevils, and the most powerful of all the devils is named Asmodeus. And Asmodeus rules over the kind of the bottom layer of the Nine Hells, and then all of these archdevils, or not all of them, but many of them, rule sort of different layers of the Hells, kind of moving up. They don't necessarily correlate to power level, which one is where. They just, you know, have different places. Although Asmodeus is the kind of the strongest, the most intelligent, the cleverest of all the devils. And likewise, for the demons, they kind of have a similar counterpart. There are the demon lords, or the demon princes. And these beings are demons. Demons aren't quite as Demons are just kind of random in their appearance. Like, demons can have a myriad of different forms. Like, no two demons are completely alike. And the most powerful of them are these demon lords. And each one is kind of unrelated, and they don't necessarily work for each other. As a matter of fact, they don't work for each other. They're all just trying to kind of pursue and promote their own goals. But some of the iconic ones that you may have heard of before, there's Orcus, there is Lolth.
Pete, how can you not have started with Demogorgon?
Well, I was going to say Demogorgon because you all probably have heard of Demogorgon from recent. I saved it last. I even wrote it on the notes. No worries. Demogorgon you probably have heard of because of Stranger Things is very popular, and they talk about the Demogorgon a lot. But everyone loves him. So these are the kind of most powerful demons, and these are the main kind of forces. These are the generals and kings that are battling against each other in this never-ending battle for the fate of the cosmos that is the Blood War.
Yeah, and I mean, the big real differences between devils and demons are, with devils, in that hierarchical society Pete mentioned, devils try and work their way up. Their whole goal is to get promoted by following their rule of law to the best that they can. And then they are promoted by higher ranking devils. In the Abyss, it is just pure unbridled power. A demon lord gains an army of demons by just its pure aura of just monstrousness, whether it be its overwhelming power or what have you. So it's really cool. But I guess the whole point is, why is there this big battle going? Why did this all happen? And I think the book does a really good job of going into that. It talks a lot about who Asmodeus is, as the lord of the Nine Hells, the most powerful archdevil. It talks about the formation, or basically what cemented Asmodeus in as the most powerful devil in the trial of Asmodeus. It goes into a little detail in the book, and I think it gives you enough backstory about Asmodeus to understand where he's coming from and actually really respect it to a good degree.
He comes out of this book feeling cool.
Yeah. He feels like the smart and pragmatic character. And that's really the purpose that the devils serve. They're evil, but they're pragmatic. They're practical. And this book does a really good job of painting that light. I also want to point out this book is really entertaining to read. The way this book is set up, they have little call-outs every once in a while that take the form of actual what look like little notes stuck onto the page that are just kind of inked in there.
Implies that that's like Mordenkainen's own writing.
Yeah, exactly. They're written from the perspective of Mordenkainen, and they're really, really cool. So one of the notes that's in there, I wanted to just mention really quickly here because I thought it was so sweet, and it's talking about the devils and the demons, about law and chaos. To give you a kind of feel of the tone that this book comes across as. I'll tell you right now, this book is a dark book. It is not a fun, happy-go-lucky D&D time book. But the quote is, "Devils look at mortals as sheep, just as demons do. Except devils see themselves not as the wolves, but as the shepherds. Shepherds fleece sheep by the season and slaughter them as needed. A shepherd likely kills the wolves that threaten its sheep, but then again, shepherds always expect to lose a few sheep. If you were a sheep, would you trust your shepherd?"
I really liked that one too. I remember that one.
I was reading through that one, and I was just on the bus on the way to work. And I get like halfway through it, and I'm like, what is all of this shit about the sheep and the wolves? Like, I get it. And then I get to that last line, and I'm like, oh shit, would you make a deal with the devil? Oh, you almost trust the wolf more because you know what the wolves' intentions are. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really cool book. It's got these really nice little add-ins that, unlike in Volos, I didn't think the add-ins really helped a lot. That was just me. I didn't like the little quips back and forth. They didn't work for me. I think they work really well.
I liked the Xanathars ones myself. I thought the Xanathars ones were very fun, but these ones are cool. There's a big difference in the tone for sure throughout the book.
So another thing that this book does for you, so right now it tells you a little bit about the backdrop of Asmodeus, how he became this archdevil through this big trial. It doesn't talk much about the trial of Asmodeus, which is weird, or the contract that resulted from it, which is called the Pact Primeval, which is a sick name. I don't know why that name isn't in this book. That was a mistake. But anyway, they give you a good backdrop on Asmodeus, but they also give you a really cool backdrop on all of the layers of the Nine Hells and all of the different archdevils and the tone. Unlike the Monster Manual, which goes in great depth about, or not in great depth,
the DM's guide. Yeah, I'm with you.
Unlike the Dungeon Master's Guide, which gives you a little bit of depth about what the different levels of the Hells look like and physically are like, this book gives you the tone, what they feel, specific examples of things you might find there, and that's just sweet. Do you want to talk about any in particular, Pete?
Any particular planes?
Do you want to talk the layers, or do you want to talk about the archdevils?
Well, I know we're gonna do our favorite archdevils. You want to do that now?
Sure. Yeah, we'll talk a little about our favorite archdevils, and then we'll go into more detail on the actual layer. So
me and Jeremy, as it turns out, have the same favorite archdevil. I've always been a big fan, in particularly of Mammon. Mammon is the archdevil of the third layer of hell. The layer of hell itself is called, I was about to say Phlegethos, but that is incorrect. No, what happened to me? Minauros. Minauros. I got it. It took me a second. I got there. But Mammon is the archdevil of Minauros. And the thing that defines Mammon is his greed. He is kind of the chief financier for all of the Nine Hells, and he collects gold. And he purchases people's souls with gold. People who need money, he will offer you an exorbitant amount of money to purchase your soul. Through his agents in the material plane, he essentially has like these imps that run around, and this was one of my favorite little tidbits of lore that was in this book. But he has a book that he gives them called The Accounting and Valuation of All Things. Yes. Which is so cool. And the idea is that he has these books that he gives to his servants who can look in this book and figure out the exact gold value of your soul and offer that. And like he's been doing this for so long and he's so ancient. He has these hoards of money where like the exact gold value of your soul might be, yes, that's 200,000 gold pieces, which is a pittance upon his hoard. And so, for one thing, Mammon rakes in more souls than any of the other archdevils, but I also just like this focus, this kind of change in desire of this particular devil, where he's not focused on power in the same sense that the other ones are. He's not focused on just collecting the souls. It's this desire to be efficient and to continue to make money and to just improve and be shrewd in all of his dealings and get the absolute maximum value out of everything he does. I think it's a really cool aesthetic, and I love Mammon personally.
He's not quite Bartholomew.
Really, Bartholomew is a lot like Mammon, and you can tell my predilection for that type of character.
Yeah, I mean, Mammon is absolutely thick. Also, my favorite archdevil. What's great about this in the book, they spend a good maybe half page just talking about Mammon. And they do this for all of the archdevils. It's just enough to really give you a good feel for Bartholomew's grandfather. Little known, Bartholomew's actually a Cambion. No, they give you enough detail to really get a feel for the archdevil without drowning you in lore. That's one of the things I'm always afraid of with these kind of books, is that they're just going to drown you in lore. And I think they've done a really great job in it. Since Pete was talking...
Can I say one more thing about Mammon?
Absolutely, Pete.
There's another thing that they put in here when they're talking about Mineros, the plane. It all is kind of focused around Mammon and how he decides, because the devils kind of shape the planes that they're on. They kind of make their planes and what they want them to be. And it talks about his plane. All of the buildings have like really cheap and shoddy construction,
Yep.
And everything is kind of falling apart. All of the buildings are in ruins because he doesn't want to waste money on that things. He just wants to collect it, which adds so much personality. If you ever want to bring your players to Mineros, you have that big personality. Like when the buildings are kind of falling apart, you can have like the devils in there complaining about like the poor construction and kind of giving you this sense of the person that kind of controls their lives, which I just thought was another great note. And they kind of do that with all of the devils throughout this book. They show it not just like I think Jeremy mentioned this a bit before, but not just the physical description of the place, but the personality of the place.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean another thing that they describe about specifically Mineros. You know, they describe there are like citadels that are built throughout the different layers of hells meant to fight and repel the demons. Well, in Mineros, being 3 layers down, they're rarely used, and at this point are literally just sinking into the giant swamp that is. Like it's the kind of thing that if your players go to Mineros, that's one of the things that you'd see just straight up. What could have been once a great citadel tilted at like a 45-degree angle, mostly sunk into the swamp. Like, that's just excellent.
Yeah. There's adventures everywhere in this book that you can read. Like, I just ran a campaign on the Nine Hells, and I already want to go back because of all the stuff I'm reading about in this book.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. What's your guide, Jeremy?
Good. I was going to say, because Pete went out and picked Mammon, I was going to pick my favorite, which is Zariel. The Lord of the First. I guess she's the Archduchess, right? Is her title?
Yes.
And Zariel, for those unaware, is really sick. Zariel's a fallen angel, which literally from the Blessed Plains of Celestia, right down to the Nine Hells to join in with Asmodeus. Because she was originally given the task of overseeing Asmodeus's compact after the trial of Asmodeus. And seeing the pragmatic and practical side of the devils, she, was eventually swayed to fight when the good guys wouldn't help the devil fight. It was really cool. It's a really cool kind of story, but she's just sick because she's brutal. She's incredibly aggressive. And I think that's just a really awesome kind of way to start out the hells. This red, fiery hell angel. Right on the
gold
first layer.
Too, which I thought was cool about her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Not the kind of like calculating devil that you expect from like all of them.
Yeah, exactly. She's kind of hectic and chaotic to a degree. She's more interested in charging in and destroying the enemy than anything. And yeah, I think she's just a really cool devil. I don't have as much to really say about her play, and it's not quite as cool as Mineros.
Well, Avernus is kind of, this blasted wasteland because of the blood war.
Because of all the fighting.
That's where the front lines of it are. So it's just always like the lines are pushing back and forth. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, actually, what is cool about it, right, is maybe you'll see the fallout of these great battles all over the place in Avernus. You'll see giant hell engines, machines of metal and fire that are just discarded and laid to waste. And it's just sweet. Now, Pete, if you had to pick one that's your least favorite, which one would you pick? I know mine.
Least favorite.
There are only 9.
I didn't really.
For me, it's Glacia.
Glacia, I could kind of take or leave. I was thinking the kind of. I'm going to count Fernia and Belial as one.
Sure.
For them, or did I say? Yeah, I said it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they didn't do much for me. I thought they were a little bit boring. I do like the tone of Phlegethos more than I originally thought it was, with this kind of like carnival atmosphere almost. It's like the devil's sort of vacation layer of hell. But
I think that'd be a really cool place to visit in the game, right? Going to literally just infernal casinos and things. I mean, that just sounds radical.
Doing things again. One of the things that I built into the lore of the Nine Hells when I ran it was this like fighting pit, and the idea was that this is the pit in which pit fiends are born. Like lesser devils can come and duke it out here, and if they prove themselves enough, they will be promoted to pit fiends, which doesn't exactly fit the way the Nine Hells work in terms of now having read this, but it's kind of a cool effect, and I probably would have put that in Phlegethos had I known that that was what Phlegethos was like, because I think that was more the tone than Despater, which is where I put it.
But anyway, Pete, we've talked we talked a lot about like what we like here, and also a little bit what we might not have liked. But how useful do we think this is? I mean, as I said before, I thought this was a very interesting read. It was actually like entertaining to read, in part because of the little quips. And in part because of just the writing is interesting and the lore is interesting. So really, I think this part of it, of the book, talking about the Nine Hells, is particularly useful for dungeon masters. If you're a dungeon master, this is going to be super helpful, because, well, if you ever want to use devils, demon, or devils in this case, or the Nine Hells in your game, this is everything you really need. It gives you all little touchstones to start off on, and it gives you something cool. It gives you an example for every single layer of some cool thing that players could explore and find in that layer. A great example is Stygia. Oh, not Stygia. Not Stygia.
You want Mephistopheles?
Yeah. Crap. Which one is that?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it too. It's hard to remember all of them.
Yeah, especially with all the other stuff too.
There's so many.
Where are my notes? It's Cania.
Cania.
Below Stygia. Cania, which is run by Mephistopheles, is a frozen hellscape where everything's frozen over, and it describes these sick, like, citadels that are frozen under the ice that were meant for arcane experimentation, that hold all manner of forgotten, extremely powerful secrets that Mephistopheles just hasn't deigned to check on in millennia. Those are so freaking cool. Like, that is going to one of those.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things in the book.
Busting into one of those frozen citadels, discovering millennia old secrets and magics, and then getting what you need and getting out. That is such a cool just arc that you could run in a campaign. And they have that for every single level, something like that.
Bionic Shiva says, time for a hell campaign. Yeah, I feel like anyone who reads this is going to feel that way. It's going to be like, yeah, time to run a camp. Like, it's so good for that. One of the other things I wanted to mention, just about like why these books are kind of good for DMs. There's something really cool to me about the Nine Hells, because like Jeremy had mentioned earlier, they are these kind of places. They're these kind of places that everyone kind of agrees on. No matter what your multiverse is, everyone has their own sort of prime material plane. You know, the kingdom of your place is going to be unique to everyone's game. But people's experiences in the Nine Hells tend to be kind of similar. And there's something really cool about being able to talk to a player that you've never played with before and be like, oh yes, we went to the Nine Hells, and they understand what that means and they understand the implications of that. For example, oh, we fought against Zariel and defeated her. And then that player like understands, even without having been in your campaign, like, oh man, what are the implications of that in the world? Like, how did that affect the Blood War? Or how did, and they also understand just the power scale. They might say something along the lines of, wow, you guys were extremely overstated and got way too many items in that game, which, you know, may be true to each their own. But I don't know, that's something I really love, is that players across different games all have these same kind of cultural touchstones that are the Nine Hells, that are the Abyss, and these powerful people that run them. Yeah.
And Hey, even if you aren't a dungeon master, this is such a useful utility for a fiend pact warlock. I hate being that specific, but if you're a warlock and you want to pick the fiend pact, holy shit, this has so much cool detail. It is just, your character can go from like your mundane average character to so rich and full of depth just from reading this and having that deeper context. It's awesome. I also think it leaves just enough space, going back to the DM, it leaves just enough space for you to get the idea, get the framework, have it right, and be able to still extrapolate and do your own stuff. So yeah, I think it's sweet. Let's move on a little bit from just talking about the levels in the 9 hells, the layer of the hells, and the archdevils. Let's talk a little bit about the cults. One of the things that this book does for each of the archdevils, including ousted archdevils, actually, archdevils,
and also the demon lords,
and there's the demon lords as well. Thank you, Pete. It goes through and gives these cult boons. These boons are, generally speaking, a choice of spells or some special magical ability that you can use for cultists that follow that devil. So if you're having a devil, or not that devil, but that character. So let's say you have a campaign that's really focusing on the 9 hells, and Mammon really is supposed to be a big deal. Mammon with his buying the world with gold, right? There's a bunch of information in here about ways that you can make Mammon's characters feel unique. He's got a couple cool powers. It has a list of different kind of spells like Arcane Lock or Glyph of Warding that are kind of along that kind of miserly protect my stuff feel, that you can use for characters that might follow Mammon, might be in a cult to Mammon. And more than that, it goes into not a ton, but enough detail as to what the cult should feel like. So, for example, it gives some examples of potential things that could worship. It's like greedy dragon, Durgar. Monsters like that could definitely be part of some sort of cult that it just puts out there. Another thing is incredibly wealthy, rich people, the bureaucratic elite of a city, right? That maybe have bought their way into power because of their deals with Mammon. These are cool ways to sort of tie everything together, right? To give that, I want the hells to be a thing later in my campaign, but I want to have that foreshadowing early. Sorry, go ahead, B. You saying something?
I was going to say, it also gives these kind of cool little boons that you can give to powerful cult leaders. Say like the leader of the cult might get this thing. For Mammon specifically, there's one called a Promise of Wealth. As a bonus action, this creature chooses one creature it can see, and up to 5 of its allies of its choice become convinced that the target carries great wealth. Until the end of this creature's next turn, those allies get advantage on all attack rolls against it. So you can have this one moment where where this leader does something that would be very Mammon to incite the greed of his allies to direct to his own ends. Which is just another way to add more flavor and to make it feel like you're creating. And there's one of these for every single archdevil and every single demon lord.
Yeah, and we just used Mammon there because we were talking about Mammon a lot earlier. I think Mammon's is like the least cool of all the other ones in here. There's some really cool ones. The cult boon options are really, really cool. They even have some options for infernal and demonic cambions. I don't know if you're familiar with cambions, general people in the world. I don't know who I'm talking to here, but the idea is a cambion is a half devil, half human. How those came about, there are a lot of different ways. Maybe a parent sold the soul of their unborn child, and a cambion came out as a result, or something like that. All sorts of things, but they have some cool options on how to flavor cambions to be more like some of the devils, and they do it through this ability, mainly Fury of the Nine, which is just a cool ability that gives it advantage on one creature that it picks to just destroy. It's like, no, you. It's that kind of lawful. His succubi, exactly, Lance. Reflecting in chat. Anyway, I think they are a little skimpy on the Infernal Cambions deal. They recommend to just kind of take
felt
some
a
of
little
the
bit like an
boon
afterthought.
stuff. Yeah, but it's nice that they're there, just because some people don't know what Cambions are. They've never heard the term before, and it's cool to just mention them. Cambions are like really big, more evil tieflings. And speaking of
one
tieflings,
other thing, I was going to say, one other thing that's in this chapter are infernal tiefling options. So the idea is that the tiefling in the player's handbook, that would be a tiefling that was kind of blessed by Asmodeus, but they give you a different tiefling variant, almost like a sub-race, where you can replace kind of your ability score increase and that like little spell casting trait that tieflings get with one that is specific to a specific archdevil. For example, the Levistus one, which is an archdevil that is frozen in a block of ice. He gets that tiefling would get like a Ray of Frost cantrip and an armor of Agathis, like a cold armor cantrip, spell, and then what is the other one that they get? They have the darkness spell. So they get like just some different spells that flavor them more after a particular archdevil, which may be cool for a tiefling. One kind of I like the abilities and I like the kind of changes for the tieflings and the options. I am not big on one thing that they did in this book is the player content. I wish they had just condensed it into one section where you can see all of it rather than having it like spread out throughout the book, because it's kind of a pain to like, if you want to look for the tiefling stuff, you have to like scroll to the right spot. Wow, my voice just cracked, something fierce. Scroll to the right spot in the Blood War. And then once you get later on, there's some like playable elf sub-races like the Eladrin. And you can get those in the elf section. So I wish that was just all in one big chunk. But the content itself is cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that they go into just enough detail. And all of these changes for the different infernal tieflings, for the different Lords of the Nine, they're small changes. It's mostly to what spells they would intrinsically know, and some ability score changes. But I think it's enough to really give you a little bit of a jumping off point to feel a little different mechanically. And then you have all of the rest of the flavor throughout this entire chapter that can really help you flush it out even more. So I think it's just right. Additionally, I just want to point out, and this goes for all of the sub races that I've seen, or all the races I've seen so far in this book. I think they've done a really good job with not going totally off the wall with balance. Things seem pretty good. They're in a good spot. They aren't weak like the Dragonborn. Sorry, Dragonborn players. But they aren't OP like the Variant Human. So
we've talked about a lot about devils, Jeremy. Want to tell us what your favorite demon lord is?
Well, before we jump into that, just one last thing about the devils. At the end of the devils section, before they talk about demons, at the very end, there's about half a page on cool devil customization tables, ways that you can make devils in your setting, or maybe even tieflings, feel a little more rich. Make devils and the servants of devils a little more interesting. If you like the bonds, ideals, and flaws kind of deal that you roll for as player characters, you're gonna like them. If you don't use those, well, you probably won't use this either. But it's there. Sorry, my favorite, Prince of the Abyss. Oh my goodness. So before I say that, for those who aren't aware of the Abyss, unlike the Nine Hells, in which there are 9 layers, the Abyss has just infinite chaotic jumble of layers that aren't evenly distributed, and they're all over the place. It's a giant mess. My favorite archdevil, Prince of the Abyss, is going to be Demon Prince. It's going to be Juiblex. 100%.
Tell us about Juiblex.
I'm a Juiblex man. So Juiblex, also commonly mispronounced as Jubliex, is called the Faceless Lord. Basically, he's a demon lord of oozes. All it does is consume. It just oozes around and eats everything, and it's freaking sick. It leaves this awful trail of slime behind it from whence other oozes spawn. And it's interesting because oozes aren't demons. They're oozes. They're a different thing entirely. So I don't know why this guy's a demon lord. I don't know. Whatever. He makes the demon lord who makes non-demons.
I think he invented oozes. Is the idea?
Why aren't oozes demons?
Because they're their own thing. Like he created a new thing. Just I think Inogu, just as Inogu, like the gnolls just kind of like ran off of him, and they're like.
I've never heard someone call it Inogu. I mean, I guess that's how it's Inagu.
How would you say it?
I call him Inagu.
Inogu,
I don't know, you might be right.
Inogu, potato.
But yeah, I don't know. I love Dweeblex. He's just this really cool idea. I like the cultists. They give cool cult options for characters that would follow, like we were talking about.
Yeah, I liked that too.
Oh my god, the Dweeblex ones are just sick. It'd be cultists in a cave that have their little slime ranch.
They got a slime farm. Yeah.
And they're just, soon the world will be purged with slime. And it's just excellent because it's real goofy.
And not us, because we worship Dweeblex.
Yeah, but not us because we worship Dweeblex. And then they get their cult buff, which is they become incredibly dumb because their mind melts away and they become weird jelly people, which is sick. Okay, let me explain that a little more. The cult boon for Dweeblex, what it does is it gives the characters, there are two options. One is liquid movement, which it can move up to 20 feet through spaces no more than 1 inch in diameter. And it has to end its space in an open area after. So basically, a cultist of Dweeblex that is blessed by Dweeblex with this unholy power can literally just like squish into a mouse hole and into the other side. Like, it's just so cool. I love that idea, the amorphous kind of form. And then the cult leader gets slimy organs. I love the name Slimy Organs.
Such a troll. It's just a troll demon lord.
Yeah, it gives the creature resistance to damage, and then it damages creatures when it dies. I don't know. I'd love to do some silly stuff with Dweeblex. Like, just have some really, maybe like some really dumb hill giants that worship Dweeblex. Because I want like the big dumb thing that can just kind of like squish down. It just makes me feel really happy, the idea. Anyway, I digress. The Demon Lords are really cool. They have not as much depth as the devils, but they
I think that's part of their nature is that they aren't, like, they're not supposed to have as much depth as the devils.
Yeah, the one thing that defines a Demon Lord is it has its personal view of how the world should be, and nothing else matters to the demon. They are literally incapable of empathy. There we go. That was the word I want. And all they know is their vision. So Dweeblex is, I just want to eat everything. Whereas Demogorgon actually has this really cool depth to him, where Demogorgon wants to purge the world of all living things because Demogorgon is so paranoid. And it just wants to be able to rest without fearing that it will be destroyed. Which is like, shit.
One of my favorite pieces of lore in this book is talking about Demogorgon's goals, and this idea that if Demogorgon were to win, he wouldn't stop until he was the only thing, or I don't know if he is the right, they were the only thing left in existence. And at that point, Demogorgon, since it's this two-headed creature, would end up just fighting with himself and eliminate himself, leaving just an empty void, which is just such a chilling thought of that being the end of reality, is just this like creature conquers it to rest and then still is unsatisfied and just leaves nothing left. It's such a cool piece of lore and an idea.
Yeah, and I think that's just my favorite part of all of this. It's just super cool. They don't talk a ton about Lolth in the Abyss section, but they talk about her more in the Elves section, so we'll probably talk about her next.
Yeah. Can I do my favorite Demon Lord?
Oh yeah, Pete, who's your favorite Demon Lord?
I like Frazer Blue. Frazer Blue is the Demon Prince of Deception.
Fraz or Blue?
Nice. That was a pretty good joke. That was a pretty good one, Jeremy. I like Frazer Blue. He's the Demon Prince of Deception. He thinks that he's the smartest being in all of existence, and that only he can see like through the lies of reality, and that there's this kind of like this grand cosmic plan for everything that he knows, and he'll occasionally kind of like make these like to his followers make like strange and cryptic remarks about like just this grand design of the universe that only he can see. And the thing that I love about him is that he's powerful enough and he's intelligent enough that it's kind of like, well, what if he is? What if he does see? And that's what really appeared to me about Fresber or Blue. But his main thing is that he will just say anything to get to what he wants. He'll go to, he's a liar. So that's the other thing.
You can't trust it, even if he does tell you. Is he lying?
Yeah. So he, he'll show up to a wizard and just pretend to be like this ancient sage that has these powerful magical secrets and have him, sign away whatever power work for whatever ends and then ditch him when he's done with them. He just is a pure liar. And I really like Fraser Blue for that reason. But it's just that one thought, like, what if he is? What if he really is right?
Yeah, and one of the themes throughout this, there are a few kind of, I call them the unique demon lords. Grozd is another one, who was once a devil that had fallen and transformed into a demon, trying to carve out his own path to power, in kind of refuting Asmodeus. But there are a few of those, like Fraser Blue and Grozd. But for the most part, a lot of these demon lords are just like, "Brah, destroy!" Or they're like Dweeblex, and they're like, "I don't even understand that I'm killing everything." And that's just what they do. And I guess those hand gestures were him eating everything. But yeah, I don't know. They're cool.
Mr. Plunderloot says in chat that he was originally made to destroy some Vorpal swords that Gary Gygax gave to some of his players way too early in a campaign. That's wicked funny, and that seems like, I'm not surprised at all that is how Fraser Blue ended up into the lore. That's
super troll.
That's so good. That feels very Gary Gygax from what I know of his gaming history.
Oh yeah. But yeah, the demon lords, they all have their own demonic boons. The demonic boons are a lot more powerful than the infernal boons. And again, these are things that would be given unto a follower of the demon. Generally speaking, these will not be applicable in your games at all. If you're a dungeon master, at least for player characters. They'll be super useful for NPCs, for villains, but demons are kind of inherently too monstrous and chaotic for most player characters to handle, unless you're playing a super evil campaign. And yeah, like I was saying before, these are a lot more powerful than the infernal options tend to. I'm trying to think of a good example. Oh, I guess I gave Dweeblex as the example earlier.
Yeah. And one other thing, at the end of the demon section, like the devils, there's the demon customization tables. You can get like the different personality traits and ideals and bonds and flaws and roll for those. But then they also add two things I want to note. I'll go back to the bonds in a second. But two things, they add unusual demon features. So as I mentioned before, demons, none of them like look the same. And they added these like 20 different miscellaneous features that you can give to kind of roll on this table and give each demon that you summon one of these unique things. So even though there's like a bunch of the same demon, for example, you might have like 4 dretches, but each one's a little bit different. So some of the examples of these little features you can tack onto them. Huge feet. This demon suffers disadvantage on strength, athletics, and acrobatics checks when they involve moving its feet. There are head hands. This demon has heads where its hands should be and uses the head's mouths to manipulate objects. If the demon had claw attacks, they become bite attacks that deal piercing damage. And they're all just cool little things like that can, one, make each demon feel like scary. Like the one with the head hands, the party's going to be like, that's terrifying and disgusting. This is the leader, we kill it first. Yep. And so they're just really cool. I really like the little unusual demon features. I wish there was more, just because I wanted to read more of them because they were fun to read.
I mean, personally, if I were running this if I were using this in one of my games, I would also use this weird table for like the big bad on the material plane that maybe had visited the abyss, right? And
that'd be really cool.
By it.
Or even a cultist.
Yeah, I mean,
even like a cultist leader.
I mean, some of them are pretty mundane, like extra arm, and then then there's heads for hands.
And the other thing for the demon bond sections, they have D6 tables of like different ideals and bonds and flaws you can run. So like a personality trait, for example, I enjoy telling lies. That's my only language. For the bonds, the demons just had 1, and it just roll a D6. If you roll a 1 through 6, you get, I am a perfect product of creation, destined to one day shape the cosmos to my whims. Everything I do verifies my destiny. It's just every single demon believes this, which I thought was a really good way of like driving that point home in the book. I don't know. I thought that was really
actually
it's a little bit funny.
Put the table on and just have one thing on the table.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's also like really cool, I think.
Oh, I totally agree. And actually, after that, they have another set of tables, which is really cool, and it's cool ideas for fiendish cults. It gives you a series of 6 options for like cult goals, cult resources, cult organization types. Like, for example, if it's a cult of personality or something like that, and maybe hardships that are racking the cult. And I think this is a really excellent jumping off. If you're playing a game that involves a lot of fiendish cults, fiendish being an overarching term for anything from that kind of evil spectrum of outer planes, this is a really awesome starting place for figuring out like maybe some of the goals or the reasons for some of the goals that your cults might have in the material. Some of the things issues I may be running into and all sorts of cool stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, with that, that pretty much
kind of towards the end. I think we've covered everything too.
Yeah, so let's give our last we've kind of through this, which we kind of expected. It was going to be a much more relaxed stream with this one anyway. Just kind of our thoughts. If you're a player and you're interested in playing a Fiend Pact Warlock, there's a lot of super useful information in this first chapter on the
oh yeah.
If you're just a fantasy buff and you love reading cool fantasy lore, this is awesome because it paints the devils and the demons as part of this greater cosmos that, to a degree, both are necessary. And that's really cool. The devils aren't just objectively evil, and I like that. It validates them to a degree that I feel like a lot of other settings might just be like, oh, they're the devil, they're bad. And I appreciate that they give them more depth here. And if you're a dungeon master, this whole thing's great. If you're ever going to use the Nine Hells or devils or demons.
Odds are, if you read this, you will want to as a DM.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the big thing for me as this over the Dungeon Master's Guide, this has so much soul, has so much character. The tone to the book is excellent. I think it's very well written, as opposed to, I mean, well, nothing, right? Going with the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's really a very flat tone. It's not super interesting to read, and it doesn't give you the understanding and the tone of it. You don't know how these places are supposed to feel, the different layers of the hells, or the exact makeup of the abyss, because it goes into more detail about the abyss itself too. Pete and I didn't talk about that a ton, but it talks a lot about really explaining how the abyss is as chaotic as, and actually there's a cool part about demonic incursions and how you can kind of
I really like that
as
too.
Existing in the world, right? The infancy of a demonic outbreak in a world.
And treats it almost like a virus. Very cool.
Oh my god! Bionic Shiva in chat, Mr. Headhands grapples you. Oh, Jesus Christ! Oh, excellent. Now I'm just thinking of it on a cult leader, and it's just human heads on the hands just biting you. Like,
I feel like that's like a multi-stage boss fight where you fight him in Form 1, he's just a human, and then he's about to die. He just kind of like, his skin kind of shifts, and he gets just a bunch of these like demon fucking like buffs. I don't know, I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. Oh, and one last thing, if you're interested in kind of lesser demons like the I say lesser, like the Baylor or the Garistro or the Marlith, it gives you just like, they give you a couple options for maybe cultists that might be worshipping one of them, one of these not demon lord demons.
And the kind of boons that they might give.
Yeah, they're okay. They again feel kind of like an afterthought, but I'm really glad that they're there. Just as
just more stuff.
But with that, I think that's going to rein in our conversation here. If anything that we said today sounded interesting to you, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes was pretty cool. Going to be available on Amazon on Friday, I think. Otherwise, you can get it at your local game store. Probably not, though, because they're sold out everywhere.
They had some printing issues, too.
Yeah, they had some super serious printing issues. So, yeah, I mean, with that, well, actually, do we have any last announcements?
I mean, nothing that we didn't already announce. Tune in Friday for the Player DM Day swap. Starting at 9 o'clock, Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time, 4 one-shots with me and Jeremy playing as Bartholomew and Roger from hit D&D stream, Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time. That's all I think.
Loose use the word hit, but anywho, thanks for watching, everyone. We super appreciate you.
Thank you for.
Sorry, Pete, go ahead.
I was going to say thank you also. That was all.
Well, Pete's also thankful.
Thank you.
Without further ado, I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Pete.
And this is
Pete and Jeremy's
DnDTime Talks.
Oh, wait, no! I did so bad.